Dear friends, it's such a pleasure to address this august audience, and I've been looking forward to this. Uh, I was personally very delighted to be a part of ICT Academy because I had a small role in when this academy was born. We were retained to recruit a CEO who still now continues, and he's been doing very well. And my contribution for ICT Academy was that initially. And I'm personally delighted to speak on the theme of leadership, especially academic leadership. When I started thinking of what I could share with this assembly of policymakers, academic entrepreneurs, teachers, and academic administrators, and a few corporate leaders thrown in, I could think of three things which I would say and finish earlier than my 10 minutes. Okay, so first was a thought by Stephen Covey, which he talks about anyone who has made a difference in life. He should have three things. Difference in life for good or bad. So he's saying vision, passion, discipline. And then he says Hitler had all the three. And what he calls was destruction, because he missed one fourth attribute, which is what Stephen Covey calls as conscience, the ability to listen to your deep self, which is what he interprets. The second, idea that I wanted to share with you is by my favorite poet, Bharati. Some of you may not know Tamil, forgive me, I'll explain to you. Bharati, Subramanya Bharati, the poet, he attempts to weave three thoughts. You know, the idea of yoga, and the idea of yagna, whatever you choose to do in life, and the idea of jnana, wisdom. It's a very simple poetry which says, "Urukku ulaithidal yogam, nalam vongidumaru வருந்துதல் யாகம் போருக்கு நின்றிடும் போதும் உளம் பொங்கல் இல்லாத அமைதி மெஞ்ஞானம்." What he basically says is, he attempts to weave together a link between these three things. The idea of oneness, yoga, I mean what you choose to do internally. The idea of yagna, whatever you choose to do externally. And the idea of wisdom. I want to kind of connect this with the third impactful thing, at least it impacted me, is the stuff that Aristotle says about excellence. Okay, where he says, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, therefore, is not an act, but a habit. I just want to kind of weave together all this in the context of the academic world today, especially attempting to see it from the shoes of these four universes that we belong to: the universe of the academic entrepreneurs, the universe of the academic administrators, the universe of the teachers, and the universe of people like us, the policy makers, the politicians, and the bureaucrats. Today is the age of convergence. Today is the age of entrepreneurship. And today is the age of innovation. Due to various reasons, these ages have come about. I mean, it could be various reasons. Thomas Friedman may talk of 10 different reasons why the world has become flat world, and overnight it's become, flat from being round. Many people have postulated this. But I wanted to really ask you a question. For instance, when we all passed out of engineering colleges some 30 years back, for almost 15, 20 years in Tamil Nadu, there were only about 12 to 15 engineering colleges. We didn't even imagine that it would be anything larger at that point in time. And the one man came, overnight he took a decision. That man was Purushi Thalaivar NGR. And much as most of us don't attribute this to him, he just suddenly did one small thing with his red ink. And overnight was born 30 colleges. Okay, the entire policy structure got slightly reworked at that point of time with the state government, with the chief minister. What he could do at that point in time was to open up in certain manner, the private engineering colleges, the capitation colleges to start up. It had all its pluses, minuses, whatever, but like in entrepreneurship, what we say, largely these quantum opportunities are born either because policy structures change or technologies change. The intersection of policy structures and technology are great business opportunities. It may apply to WhatsApp, it may apply to Facebook, it may apply to many things. Like in the convergence of these four technologies, SMAC technologies, as some of our industry leaders talk about, the social media, mobility, the analytics, and cloud, as they call, there are many opportunities which are getting born all around the place. It's in a way a convergence of technologies which allows a certain discontinuities in the demand supply to happen. In my view, that was 30 years back an important policy structural change. Okay, it created opportunities. It brought in all kinds of entrepreneurs. All kinds of entrepreneurs came in. People who were in education came in. People who were in politics came in. People who were contractors came in. People who were bootleggers came in. And all kinds of people came in at that point in time to fill this void, fill this opportunity at that point in time. And to me, these four universes, when I map out and look at people who came in with entrepreneurship at that point in time, all of them had vision, passion, and discipline. Some of them also, in addition, had the ability to listen to their heart and build their educational empires with certain set of values. In the sense at that point in time, I'm just taking one example of educational entrepreneurship as to what kind of things that can be built. And I want to really link to the Upanishadic, one Upanishad which talks about leadership. Probably the only definition of leadership that in a Upanishad we could figure out, which is leadership is all about seeing the unseen, articulating the unarticulated, and acting what is withheld. Very simple Upanishadic, Kathopanishad is supposed to, where it is supposed to figure in. I think out of these many people who came in, and in my view, even today the opportunities in the education field are largely born out of either a policy level structural change which gets introduced or by an interplay of technologies. Both of them create opportunities even today in education. What kind of institution you attempt to build, what kind of institution yours ends up to be, really depends on these four, from an entrepreneurial perspective. What kind of passion you have, what kind of vision you have, what kind of discipline you bring to fore, and fourth, what kind of you're listening to your deep heart that you actually bring to bear. Let me look at the second category. I think this is a category which is very critical, the academic administrator category. In a way, the equivalent of the professional CEOs and the senior managers and the middle managers that we have. Unfortunately, the academic administrator as a category never really kind of has evolved with the respect that it deserves and the distinction that it deserves. Oftentimes, it's the teachers which get extended to this category. Managing is seen to be the corporate domain, as though academic, even the way they get called administrators as distinct from managers, though what they do is really managing. If you really look at the administrator and the manager distinction, oftentimes, I used to study for IAS and I took public administration at that point in time. The first thing they start with is the idea of administration as distinct from management. I read it very deeply, but I honestly couldn't figure out. All that I figured out was that you minister to someone, and minister is supposed to serve in the sense. Minister means serve. I mean, you administer to the public or whatever, so that's the idea. But if you really look at the big demands which are getting placed on the hands of the academic administrators, really it is, they have to manage the budget, they have to manage, HR, they have to manage operations, they have to manage everything which a manager does in a corporate world. but with very little internalizing of the managerial principles and practices. In my view, leadership today in the academic administrator world would mean internalizing a whole lot of these managerial principles, deploying them into action, and I like to really see, a lot more of academic administrators own up basic business principles. That's one thing I like to leave there. As far as teachers are concerned, phenomenal pedagogy changes are happening today. And are you able to embrace them? Are you able to kind of keep that original idea that a teacher is someone who makes a difference to the students that he touches and feels? The guru idea, which has been deeply ingrained among us, but with classroom size of 60s to 100s, how am I going to do that? The constraints of those kinds. But truly, I think the teachers of the day, can you own up the new pedagogies which are coming around, the kind of innovations, the e-learning, the kind of technological phenomenons which are happening today around us, using social media for education, many innovations, okay? Let me finally address the policymakers, the politicians, and the bureaucrats. The beauty in these 4 universes is that many people are moving across these universes, which is a phenomenal thing. I think the initial 30 entrepreneurs who came in to fill the educational space, which got created in the early 80s, many of them were teachers. I was quite surprised when I actually looked at who were these 30 and figured out that 8 of them were actually people who were actually teaching, who became entrepreneurs, who came in. Pachamuthu is a classic example. The SRM group, he was basically a teacher in a school who came in and created this enterprise, which is today worth maybe 2,000 crores or whatever. If you do a valuation of SRM group, I think many of them have moved these 4 levels. As it happens in the corporate world, you have the technical people who become entrepreneurs, you have the managers who become entrepreneurs. Unfortunately, in India, the reverse doesn't seem to happen much. Once you're an entrepreneur, you remain an entrepreneur. Failure and moving into something else is what the choice forced on them. Okay, so I would really like to kind of trigger this conversation along this thought that entrepreneurial ability to identify demand-supply gaps, entrepreneurial ability to identify gaps which are likely to arise over a period of time, your ability to sense that and do it creates leadership. Leadership in an entrepreneurial sense, the academic world is crying for it. I remember still Kumaramangalam Birla in one of the CII meetings make an open statement that the license Raj, which was crippling the industrial world pre-LPG days or whatever, over the 90s and to some extent in the early 2000s, that seems to have gone away, dismantled to a large extent. But that seems to have come with a certain ferocity into the social sector, especially the education sector. He was narrating how difficult it was to create a school near the steel plant that he was running, Hospet or somewhere. And he was talking about the kind of regulations which make it so tough to create an institution of excellence. And I think it's true even today with, you need to just look at the AICTE, UGC and the conundrum regarding the institution of the regulator for higher education and things like that. So I think the world of policymakers today to foster leadership, I think there's a crying challenge today at this point in time. And I think you know as well as I do, I'm sure our Aam Aadmi new inductee, they've spoken many times about the kind of things which need to get dismantled as far as this educational structure, which currently is in the hands of the politicians and the policymakers. A lot of innovations can be fostered if some of these changes can be brought about. And in my view, it's a crying need for people like you to exert that kind of pressure, which can make the politicians end up with them doing this choice, and people to see you as the constituency which will back them up for these educational reforms. My only statement here I would like to leave with is that leadership, in my view, are a string of moments of leadership. There's nothing like, the leader and he's the leader for eternity. I think Each of us have moments of leadership, and each of us have opportunity to create those moments of leadership. I still remember the 1977 when we were all in engineering college, that night in which actually a revolution took place, a political revolution of phenomenal leaders losing overnight to nondescript people. It just happened right here in this country, and it was caused by moments of leadership expressed by common people, small people who collectivized and who could bring about a revolution right in this country. And I think today, you may have Rajinikanth's movie talk about walking up the rooftop of an engineering college and unearthing thousands of crores of money stacked up there. Maybe an exaggeration, but the fact is educational corruption is the single most crippler of creativity and leadership today. As Ananthakrishnan, the past Vice Chancellor, said, it may not be 3,000 crores, as he says, in 1 year, one state, 3,000 crores of educational corruption happens. But I think to me what needs to be dismantled is the regulatory structure which allows this degree of educational corruption. In my view, you and each one of you can be a leader to create those moments of leadership, to bring pressure on the political system, on the national political system, to kind of make these changes. And of course, bureaucrats have a phenomenal role to play. Whoever is that bureaucrat who did that note to MGR to liberalize education at that point in time must have been a phenomenal innovator, a phenomenal leader. Whoever gave that idea that do education in this way, you could have many flowers bloom in a certain quick manner. And today, many of us are talking about doing a similar act in medical education. Why is it not happening? Why is it still not getting liberalized? Because there's no real pressure for a politician to kind of exert in that direction. And in my view, that moment of leadership you can create, each one of you can create, whether you're in any of these 4 tiers of leadership, whether you're an academic administrator, you're an academic entrepreneur, whether you're a teacher, or whether you're a policymaker or a politician. On that note, may I wish you many, many moments of leadership than looking for that one macho leader who will do things right and everything will change. Can we all discover the leadership process that each of us can foster? Can we really discover the leader in us? And that's a note on which I like to leave. Thank you. Thank you so much.